live here on Monday Night Football, the new YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe. Hammer that subscribe button right now. We are about to dive into what we just witnessed from the former dominant squad, Buffalo Bills, just rattling off division championships, winning the AFC East for the last several years. Those days are over. The Bills lose tonight to the Denver Broncos, the red-hot Denver Broncos, 3 straight games. We will dive into everything that just happened. Some thoughts from around the league. Dan Campbell, something that really sticks out to him that I think some of the Belichick guys could lean on. Robert Saleh, Antonio Pierce from last night, Sunday Night Football, the big Raider win, and some thoughts on CJ Stroud. May have called it. Not going to toot my own horn. Dude's balling. So we will dive into a lot of football talk coming up. First, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Subscribe to the podcast, 3 and Out with me, wherever you may listen. If you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe. Thevolume.com. Thevolume.com. Make sure you go check that out. We got merch as well. Before we dive in to Denver and Buffalo, grab your smartphone and go to a little thing we call your App Store. And when you go to your App Store, download a little application that happens to be the official ticketing app of this podcast, Gametime. When you download the Gametime app, sign up for any pair of tickets. You a Buffalo Bills fan? Do you want to watch potentially the last couple games of Sean McDermott's career? Are you a college football fan? Do you like the NBA? Do you like any sport? You want to go watch Taylor Swift in Argentina with Travis Kelce and take it all in? Well, I got you covered. Gametime. Promo code John, $20 off your first pair of tickets. These inflationary times, getting you a little bit of a discount. Concerts, comedy shows, you name it. Gametime. Download that app right now. And when you do, use that promo code John, John, my name, $20 off your first pair of tickets. The Denver Broncos and Russell Wilson and Sean Payton just went on the road and took out Bills Mafia. That is one of the craziest things I think we've seen all season. I did not expect it. I don't care how bad everyone writing off Buffalo, how bumpy it's been, how bad Josh Allen has been on Monday Night Football. Even though it took them basically 58 minutes to take the lead in this game, which they did on the Josh Allen touchdown run, I thought, listen, this Bills team is a shell of itself, but they're not going to lose to Denver. And then what happened at the end of the game happened. And before we dive into Josh Allen, and let's face it, on Monday Night Football this year and Sunday Night Football, he's been a disaster. Sean McDermott, listen, when you're the head coach, you are responsible for everything, especially all of your coordinators. And that situation at the end of the game with 12 men on the field is an embarrassment if you're a head coach. It's one thing when you're coaching a Josh Allen or a Brett Favre, a gunslinging type player. Eli Manning went through this, and they're Phillip Rivers, and they're just throwing picks. I think it's easy for us to be critical of the coach, but Sean McDermott is not telling him to throw it to the guy that's double covered or throw it to the underneath defender and hit him in stride. But when there's 12 men on the field in a situation like that, even in a dire situation, which the kicker should make with his eyes closed, and he misses, and it doesn't count, and they get a second shot, I'm not saying that's the nail in the coffin because Sean McDermott has helped resurrect this franchise. I've known him for a long time. I think he's a very, very impressive guy. What he's done with Buffalo speaks for itself. I mean, they were a joke before he showed up. They've rattled off, I think, 13, 11, and 13 wins the last 3 seasons. That they've been right there in the mix as one of the best teams in the AFC. Right? They haven't got over the hump. They haven't made the Super Bowl. Hell, they've struggled to get to the championship game. That devastating loss a couple years to the Chiefs. Obviously, the loss last year to the Bengals. Tonight's about as bad of a loss as you can have, given the way it ended. You got bailed out, even though you deserve to lose that game. This world and football is not about what you deserve. It's a result-oriented business. And the fucking guy missed the field goal. But to have 12 men on the field in that situation, that's something as an ownership group, as a fan base, it's hard to forget that moment. And when you're in a situation as a team let's face it, the AFC, you're going to need, I think, 11 wins to make a wild card, maybe 10. But when you're 5-4, and you're like, hey, listen, we get to 6-4, we got the Jets coming up, we're 7-4, and then we get this insane stretch of at Philly, at KC, Cowboys. Even if we're 7-4 and we lose all 3 games, we're 7-7. We still got the Patriots. We still go to Miami, who we match up very well against. Like, we can get to 10 wins still, right? Now you're fucked. Like, it's over. Like, I'm sorry. The Bills, never in a million years would I have predicted this. I thought a lot of people predicting the Bills' demise at the beginning of the season were borderline on drugs. They're not making the playoffs. Like, it's over. You can't lose to the Denver Broncos at home when you're 1 game above 500 and Thanksgiving is right around the corner and you have a stretch of football at Philly, at Kansas City, Cowboys. That's got to be one of the tougher 3-game stretches in the league. I think I saw someone put up on Twitter that according to, I don't know if it was ESPN or whatever, they have the 3rd hardest schedule remaining in the NFL. Bills aren't making the playoffs. Now, big picture, Sean McDermott, does he deserve to get fired? Right? 1 bad year after all he's done? No, but these owners now, the amount of wealth that they're throwing into this team, the amount they're spending on this squad, the amount of money they have to fire guys, I would say he's in a little jeopardy. I mean, he made a pretty bold move this offseason after getting embarrassed by the Bengals when he fired Leslie Frazier. He took over the defensive coordinator situation, and now his quarterback, let's face it, has regressed. I mean, he's throwing picks. And listen, this happens. I remember it happened to Brett Favre. You have a year, but when you have a year and your team's not as good, all of a sudden you look up, you're 8-9. You're missing the playoffs. And you go, well, we got one of the top quarterbacks. And a big reason you're missing the playoffs is because of that guy. And once you lose all these defensive players, you need him to be a fucking ass kicker. You need him to be one of the elites in the league where he's been. And right now you're watching him, you're going, what is going on? Josh, where are you throwing the ball? And I get it. He's going to be more turnover prone than some quarterbacks because he's not that accurate. And he's going to try some passes that other guys should never dream of pulling off, let alone ever attempting to pull off. That's part of the package with him. But right now it feels like a lot of those passes and those throws are not even close to being completed. It's like, what am I watching? And I love this player. I'm a huge Josh Allen fan, but he looks like a disaster right now. So the team, clearly the coaching, it's off. 12 men on the field in that situation, that's as low level it gets in the NFL as humanly possible. It's like that's as embarrassing as possible. Like it doesn't get any worse than that. But when your star quarterback, who is viewed as a top 2 or 3 guy in the league, is throwing the ball constantly to the other team, and your team just as a whole is not as good, this is what you get. And the Bills are in complete shambles tonight and this season. They deserve to lose that game. I mean, they were getting thoroughly, I thought, outplayed most of the game. Cook could have had, it felt like 7 fumbles. I mean, on the one big run where he fumbled and the ball bounced back to him. I think we all have to admit, I love football. I love everything that's part of the reality television show that is the NFL. That's about as lucky of a bounce as you're ever going to see. That was crazy. If we simulated that 100 times, a guy breaking, through some defenders, getting the ball punched out, how often that ball would bounce back to the offensive ball carrier, it might be 1 in 100. I mean, at most 3 in 100. So the chances of that, just him falling on it, would probably be 10 in 100, let alone not having to break stride, continue to run. So you thought maybe the football gods were shining down on them, but they clearly weren't. And the Bills are borderline screwed. Like, I think their season's over when it comes to making the playoffs in the AFC. And on the flip side, I'm guilty of this. I crushed this team. I thought from the jump, some of the things Sean Payton was doing, some of the things he was saying, I'm like, something just feels off. Was this just a money grab? Was this like a Jimbo Fisher, the Texas A&M? They just offered him, or Lincoln Riley, to go to USC. They just cut him a check that he couldn't refuse. It's like, he's already rich, but it's like, hey, here's $90 million over 5 years. Like, yeah, I like working at Fox. I like hanging out at Manhattan Beach. I like my pad in Aspen, Colorado. But, let's do it. I'll take your money, even though I don't even love your roster. I don't even know your general manager. And that's what it felt like. But one thing Sean Payton's starting to do is kind of have a little muscle flex. And his team looks dramatically better than it did the first 3 or 4 games. I mean, obviously, they've won 3 straight. I understand he was sick, had the flu. They just had their one bad game, but they beat the shit out of the Chiefs. I mean, the Chiefs, they turned them, their defense from that game where they had 70 points scored on them. And let's face it, you get 70 points scored on you in Pee-wee football, let alone college football. But the NFL, everyone's going to make fun of you because they're going to view your team as a joke. And somehow he held this together. He got rid of some guys, shipped out Randy Gregory, Frank Clark, and held strong with Vance Joseph, which I thought was just never going to work. And now you look at a team that is kind of trending in the right direction. They're 4-5. Like I said, they've won 3 straight games. I'm not saying I wouldn't pick them to make the playoffs by any means, but if he can just have this team around 8 or 9 wins, it would be pretty impressive. And the one thing that he has done that's not even debatable is, and listen, I'm supposed to hate Seattle. I'm a 49er guy, but I've always had a soft spot for Pete Carroll. I love the way the Richard Sherman group, the way they play defense, their physicality. And I'm just a fan of just electricity when it comes to my athletes, right? Like my favorite players as a kid were like Brett Favre, Ken Griffey Jr., Barry Sanders. And Russell Wilson for 3 or 4 years was as special of a player as I've ever seen. Now, was it within the confines of the offense? Was it always his offensive line's fault that he was getting sacked? He was running into sacks? Sure. I mean, he wasn't the easiest guy to play with, but he made magic happen. And that guy, really the last year in Seattle, and then the version we saw last year, it was like, what's going on? And clearly that version is probably never coming back. He's older. He's not as quick. I did think there were some moments tonight where you're like, hey, that kind of looks like 2017 Russ. I mean, the pass he threw, the touchdown in the corner of the end zone, that had 2016, 17, 18 written all over it. And a couple of those little scrambles, which he's clearly not as fast as he once was, and the little rugby pitch pass, like that's something he was not doing when he was playing like shit. Now, he's never going to be able to live up to the contract. And if he hit the open market, no one would sniff that amount of money. But he's more than a serviceable starting quarterback right now. I mean, against the Buffalo Bills on the road. Now, granted, they're missing several starting defenders that are out for the season. But you go 24-29 on Monday Night Football, throw a couple touchdowns, and just for the most part, was in pretty complete control. Sean Payton deserves credit for that, for just turning this guy back into like, an above average player. A guy that if my defense plays well, we can compete to win football games. Because he wasn't that guy the first couple weeks, and he definitely wasn't that guy in 2022 with Nathaniel Hackett. So when things are going bad, if we're all going to shit on him, you got to give the guy his praise. You got to give the guy his flowers. Russell and Sean Payton, like pretty impressive little stretch of football from the Denver Broncos. And if I'm a Bronco fan, they're a group that, let's face it, kind of hid for a while because of the embarrassment that was everything that was becoming of the football franchise. I'd show a little pride. I'd walk into work tomorrow, with your head held high, with your chest pumped out. So impressive victory from Denver. Can you believe we're this deep into the NFL season? We got to make every second count. With DraftKings Sportsbook, you can make the most out of every game. Bet on your favorite teams for a shot at winning big bucks. New customers can score $150 instantly in bonus bets for betting $5 on any matchup. So right now, get in on the action with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Download the app now and use the code JOHN. New customers can score $150 instantly in bonus bets for betting just $5 on the NFL. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code JOHN. The crown is yours. A couple other things around the NFL. I was really thinking about this today because we're talking so much about Belichick and the Belichickian crew. I think one thing that those guys really struggle with is having self-confidence in their ability to be authentic to who they are, but also coach. Because I think when they coach, they just try to act like Bill. but no one is truly wired. Hell, no one's wired like anyone else but themselves. We all have similarities and characteristics that other people share, but every individual is so different from every individual, even if we have, a lot in common. And I think one thing that New England crew always struggled with is ever figuring out who you are. And I think the only way you can ever figure out who you are, especially as a leader, is have a lot of confidence and belief in yourself. And I think watching that Charger-Lions game and thinking a lot about it on Monday, one reason I think Dan Campbell is really excelling is I think he's very comfortable in his own skin. I see a guy that is very comfortable with his strengths and weaknesses. Like, no one's ever going to get him confused with being Belichick or being Bill Walsh, being some Andy Reid schematical, genius. That's not his deal. But that was never Bill Parcells' deal either. And who was the guy that taught Dan Campbell mostly everything he knows? Bill Parcells. He was a Parcells guy, played for him, and then worked for him as an assistant coach. But then when he went to work with Sean Payton, I was talking to this about this with Colin on Sunday night, is I think he saw a lot of what Sean Payton could do. Unlike Parcells, Sean Payton's calling the game, but he also has an element of being really aggressive. And you saw Dan Campbell in that game going for it on fourth down. Whenever you watch his post-game speeches, he still has like this, I'm almost still a player vibe to him, but this leadership vibe that John Harbaugh, that Mike Tomlin, guys like that have gotten so much credit, Mike Vrabel, for so long. And I think when you watch Dan Campbell, why he's having success is I think he's just very true to himself. Now, obviously, they have a really talented team. He has good assistant coaches. He's hired well. His GM is good. Like, it's not just him. But I think sometimes we've seen these guys get exposed really fast. They feel kind of fraudulent. And we've been talking a lot about that over the years with Brandon Staley. I think he's trying to be a football coach, right? Like thinking of what a good football coach would say in certain moments instead of just being himself. Well, of course, look at his experience at this level. It's actually not that long. So it's harder for him to be authentic because to be authentic takes the self-confidence. The only way to build that is feel very comfortable in everything you're doing. And I watch Dan Campbell. I see a guy that, I've been in the league for 20 years, player and a coach. I know what the fuck I'm doing. Do I think I'm Belichick or do I think I'm Bill Walsh or Bill Parcells? No, not yet. But I think I'm pretty damn good. And my team reflects that. Because look at his record from the second half of last year to this season. That team is winning, and they're winning a lot. When you watch that team, you go, the other thing that's objectively it's a fact right now. When you play in a dome, Jared Goff's the top 6 or 7 quarterback in the NFL. Get him outside, different story. But you just watch him in a dome, he can go toe-to-toe with Justin Herbert. He can go toe-to-toe with Patrick Mahomes. Outside, Lamar Jackson, got problems. So as long as they're playing in a dome, which they're going to play in a lot because they literally play in a dome, and more than likely they're going to win 13, 14 games, meaning they'll probably be the 2 seed, very good chance to be strong. They do have a chance to be the 1 seed. I think the Lions, this is not smoke and mirrors. Their coach believes it, their team believes it, and they definitely got the talent. And speaking of a guy, I was making fun of it last week about Robert Sala's beard. Last night, it kind of bothered me. And I got no problem. I understand, I make fun of Ryan Day for coloring his beard, but I do understand recruiting, college football, little different animal. How you present yourself kind of matters, right? There's a reason Nick Saban is always dressed really nice. I personally think it's a little overrated, but in the South, he's old school. I get it. So Ryan Day colors his beard, probably wants to look a little younger when he's recruiting. And based on their recruiting, it's working. It's not like it's not working. So while I can make fun of him being the spokesman for Just for Men, I get it. He's being a salesman as a college coach is a big part of your job. As an NFL coach, absolutely nobody cares what you look like. Whether you're fat, whether you're skinny, whether you're short, whether you're tall, whether you're bald, whether you got gray hairs everywhere, it does not matter one iota. It's completely irrelevant. I mean, the best coach in the league, Andy Reid, is a big boy, and he's been big for a long time. The guy before him that was widely considered the greatest coach of all time is a short, lumpy guy named Bill Belichick. What you look like, who cares? And I was thinking about this. Robert Saleh, unless his wife, if I own the Jets, if his wife mandates that he colors his beard, then listen, happy wife, happy life. But if she's got nothing to do with it, and honestly, watching him, I thought, why is he obsessed with how he looks? You can't be worried about shit like that when you lose. Like, you don't have a winning record. You're not like the number one seed. You're struggling. You're holding on for dear life to be above 500, to be a 500 football team. And you're coloring your beard? Like, what are we doing? You should be worried about one thing and one thing only. How do we get first downs? What can I do as a head coach, working with my general manager, to improve our offense? I'm the head coach. What I look like is completely irrelevant, right? It does not matter. My team, my offense is broken. This guy we drafted number 2 overall clearly is never going to live up to the billing, but he's sailing the boat right now. No one else can help us. We didn't trade for anybody. This is our guy. How can I help him? And I do think that reflects like our priorities in the right spot. And I like Robert Saleh. I'm a Robert Saleh fan. And at first, when I was making fun of him for the no gray hairs, I was joking. It really kind of hit me last night. Like, what are we doing? What are we thinking about, Robert? We thinking about our next career in media? You want to call football games for CBS or Fox? Do you know you're going to get fired? Is that what we're doing here? Because that's what it kind of feels like. And on the flip side, I think Mark Davis desperately wants for just Antonio Pierce to win some games and have to hire him. I think as an owner, once you hire a coach as, to be your full-time head coach, the last thing in the world you want to do is go through that process again. Interview a bunch of people. You got to cut checks to pay people to go away. This guy's going to have a bunch of wants. You got to pay all his coordinators. Financially, it costs you a lot of money. You got to meet all these new people. It's a pain in the ass. The best case scenario, Lions hire Dan Campbell. It works and we go. Rams hire McVay. Niners hire Shanahan. You're just my coach for a while. I don't even have to think about like, who are the best coordinators? Who do I need to interview? We got to do Zooms. Then we got to fly to them. Then I got to fly to me. It's like, it's a pain in the ass, right? You would always rather just hire the right guy and never have to worry about it. But when you do hire the wrong guy, you better make the move fast. And I gave Mark Davis credit for that. But just a couple years ago, and we've talked about this before, he doesn't regret it, but clearly it did not work out when he didn't hire Rich and he went with Josh McDaniels. He wants to hire Antonio Pierce. And listen, are the Raiders that much better? They're the same guys are rolling out there than when Josh McDaniels was a coach a couple weeks ago. They don't look that dramatically different from a personnel standpoint. They clearly are playing harder, and they 100% like this guy dramatically more. But like I watched Max Crosby, he's been playing this hard, whether Josh McDaniels coached him, whether Mike Mayock was the general manager, whether Antonio Pierce is coaching the team. The guy plays his ass off every snap, whether me and you were on the sideline. But there is a different energy when you watch them play. Now, it's going to get a lot harder. They still play the Chiefs. This week, they play the Dolphins. Like, are they some real contender now? I wouldn't go that far. But if I'm Mark Davis, like, I'm 2 games in, I feel like I made the right move. And they're 5-5. So they have 7 games left. I think if he can get to 9-8. Now, I don't think 9-8 gets in the playoffs, but I think 9-8 gets him the job. Now, it might not be one of these 6-year contracts like Josh McDaniels got or Dan Campbell got. That's not going to happen. But maybe he gives them like a 3-year deal. And Antonio Pierce is at minimum the coach for the next several years. And it just kind of mellows everything out because they do have a lot of really good players. I mean, they got one of the best pass rushers in the league. They got one of the best wide receivers in the league. They have other good offensive weapons, like Jacoby Myers is a good player. Obviously, Hunter Renfrow has proven he's one of the better slots. Josh Jacobs is a stud at running back. They shouldn't have been as bad as they were. And I also think that reflects why so many executives and owners often butt heads with their head coach, because coaches will do such short-sighted things. Well, Brian Hoyer, he knows the offense. It's like, Brian Hoyer sucks. I don't care if he knows every offense that every coach in football has ever created. If we play this guy, we are going to lose. Like, that's a fact, Jack. We cannot start this guy in 2023 and think we have any chance to win. Even if it's on the road against a team starting a Division II quarterback. And you see Aiden O'Connell. Is Aiden O'Connell the next Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen? Of course not. But does Aiden O'Connell give them some life and give them some juice? Hell yeah. So I'm rooting for Antonio Pierce. And I would say right now, just find a way to go 4-3 in these last 7 games, and the job's yours. For a limited time, Verizon customers can get Netflix and NFL Plus for just $25 a month with Plus Play. That's $120 in annual savings. Plus Play is a platform where Verizon customers can shop, manage, and save on the subscriptions you already love, like Netflix and NFL Plus. With NFL Plus Premium, you get access to live games on mobile, NFL Red Zone, NFL Network, and more. Just go to Verizon.com/plusplay to bundle and save on Netflix and NFL Plus today for a limited time only. Not going to say I called it, because the bold take of the week is just that. We get bold. We swing for the fences. But last week I said that C.J. Stroud and the Houston Texans would go into Cincinnati, and they would not only upset the Bengals, but C.J. Stroud would throw his hat into the ring for the MVP conversation. Well, as we found out tonight, Josh Allen, he's not in it. Lamar Jackson definitely fell off. Joe Burrow definitely still in it. But I would say I don't think C.J. Stroud necessarily is going to be the MVP, but he's definitely the lock offensive rookie of the year, and he's got an opportunity to save a franchise. And we've been talking about this now for several weeks. If you're the Houston Texans, every day when everyone involved in that building, and I'm not talking necessarily players, but every executive, every coach, when they, pull out their badge and go in that side door, however they get in the office, they're lucky to come into work. Because in the NFL, when you don't have a quarterback, you really got no chance. Look at what the Pittsburgh Steelers are doing. They're holding on for dear life every single week. When you have one of these guys, you can win every single way. And think about this, if he just maintained this level of play the next 10 years, you're in awesome position. That's all. Wait, you're just going to throw 35 touchdowns a year? This is all you're going to do is just do this? You'd be fine. He's going to get better. There's a natural improvement that happens the more you do anything. The more you experience something, the more, I don't care what you do, the more comfortable you will be at doing that. Doesn't mean it's not always going to be this easy. He is going to have some games like he did against Carolina. He's going to have a game where he throws 3 picks. But his high end, it's not even disputable at this point, is really freaking high. He throws, an absolute beautiful ball. And I'll say it every single week, that ability to layer throws between defenders is just a game changer. And the other thing, watching Josh Allen tonight, when you have a howitzer, right, when you throw 100 miles an hour, when you have Brett Favre or Josh Allen's arm, when you hit, if you're a golfer and you're Bryson DeChambeau and you can drive it 360 yards, you're always going to lean on that. But you're also going to get in trouble with that, right? There's a reason Brett Favre and Josh Allen throw some picks that other people wouldn't even attempt to try because they don't have the arm capability to pull that off. Well, that's what makes guys like C.J. Stroud, which really is more in the world of, I'm not comparing him to this player, but of the Peyton Manning, I would say Phillip Rivers. He's got a good arm, but he's got to hang his hat on accuracy, timing, and that's how he's going to win. Now, he'll push the ball down the field, but he does not by any means have some howitzer. And I think timing, rhythm, and this offense, I remember a guy, and I think I've said this on the podcast, that is part of a franchise that interviewed and ended up hiring one of the Shanahan guys. And the way the Shanahan guy described the offense is we're going to need the quarterback. We're ideally going to run the ball more than we pass it. And if we pass it 25 to 30 times a game, 50 to 60% of those passes are going to be baked in layups, right? Boots and waggles on the movement, dumping it off to the running back, dumping it off to the tight end, or even dumping it off on a crossing route. It's a built-in, essentially a one route concept in the passing game. It's very easy. It's why if you're a good player, you can inflate your numbers that way, i.e. Matt Ryan, honestly, kind of what Purdy's doing. But you do have to have, whether it's 12 throws a game, whether it's 8 throws a game. And with CJ, it's a little more because they're throwing it a little more. But we don't need you to have these Peyton Manning just 50 attempt games, right? Josh Allen has them, Mahomes has them. That's not the way the offense is necessarily built. Though he's proven because of his training at Ohio State, like, hey, I can throw the ball a shitload. I'm comfortable doing that, and I'm accurate enough, and I have a good enough understanding of where to go with the ball that it's safe to do it. Because a lot of quarterbacks don't mind throwing the ball. You just can't trust him in that situation. And he's proven time and time again that he can be trusted. The other skill you have to have is whether you get sacked in an inopportune time, whether you throw a terrible pick, you have to have basically a memory like a goldfish. You have to be able to forget fast. You cannot worry about what just happened because it can derail you. Mentally, it can break you as a quarterback. Because when you get back in the huddle, and CJ Stroud, I guess it technically wasn't a pick six, but it might as well been. When he makes just a devastating, what looked like at the time, interception, he could go into the tank. But ultimately, when you get the ball back, you go back in the huddle, and all 10 guys are looking at you. So if you're sulking, if your head's down, which actually would be pretty understandable, 22, 23-year-old rookie, keep your head high, show confidence. That's what all the top quarterbacks have in the bag. They're unfazed by that. They got the bulletproof skin. Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes, like they're not fazed by a mistake. And he's showing that pretty young. So if I'm a Texans fan right now, I don't know, man. It'd be hard to be much more excited than you are. Okay, let's go to a little Morgan and Morgan right now. The player who made it look easy. And I've been critical on this guy. I've talked a lot of shit about him, but I got to give Russell his flowers. I mean, Russell Wilson, 24-29, the first touchdown throw he had in the corner of the end zone, that looked like vintage Russ. That looked like the guy that you went middle of a Seattle career. This is going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. Well, the conversation's changed a little bit the last couple of years, but Russell's really, I give him a lot of credit because not only would it have been easy to go in the tank, and listen, some of his positivity can drive guys that, lean a little negative like myself, a little nuts, but he just kept swinging, and he's definitely improved over the last couple of years. And it feels like in a short period of time, I'm trying to overreact here, resurrecting his career a little bit, at least getting the train back on the tracks. And for a long time, and I'm as guilty as anyone, I thought that train, like movie style, flying off the bridge down into the gully full of water and rocks, blowing up. Like I thought it was over. And now it feels like it's just back on the tracks, headed in the right direction. And for a guy that they owe a lot of money, there's been a lot of conversation about, are they going to trade him? Sean Payton hate him. And I've been part of that conversation. 24-29, couple touchdowns, lead him on a game-winning drive, just being kind of in complete control most of the game, just looking, I wouldn't say like his peak self, but just like a solid NFL quarterback is something I didn't see coming. So if you're ever injured, you can check out Morgan and Morgan. Their fee is free unless they win. For more information, go to forthepeople.com/John, John, or pound law. That's pound 529 from your cell phone. That's FOR, forthepeople.com/John, or pound law, pound 529 from your cell.